What's up, everybody? Hello and welcome to Not Your Average Meta, an MTG Commander channel dedicated to bringing you decks and commanders you wouldn't normally find in your average meta. This week's video is brought to you by our new channel sponsor, International MTG. If you're looking for competitive pricing on your favorite MTG cards, old and new, be sure to check out the International MTG store and TCG Player, link in the description of this video. This week on Not Your Average Meta, we've got another video we recorded in the International MTG Warehouse featuring 2 Boros decks and 2 partner decks. First up, we have Mr. International MTG himself, Eddie, playing the partner pairing of Anara, Wolvid Familiar, and Nadier, Agent of the Duskenel. This is a Wolf tribal deck where Eddie looks to create a rabid pack of Wolf tokens in order to overrun his opponents. Next, we have Chris returning with his own partner pairing of Rebbec, Architect of Ascension, and Silas Renn, Seeker Adept. This is an Esper artifact deck where Chris looks to spam the field with his artifacts before casting Rebbec to make his board virtually unstoppable. Then we have Justin playing his Boros Knights deck being led by Adriana, Captain of the Guard. This deck looks to get out early by playing an army of knights before overwhelming his opponents by using his commander's melee ability. Finally, we have Falgrau playing his own Boros deck, which is being led by Raiyuu, Storm's Edge. This is a Samurai tribal deck that looks to take advantage of the Samurai tribe's super buffs and his commander's extra combat step ability to win with commander damage. Now that our fighters, let's enter the International MTG Warehouse and see which deck will come out on top. Turn 1, Chris plays a Terramorphic Expanse and cracks it to go get a Plains. Justin plays an untapped Spectator Seeding for turn and passes. Fog plays his own Spectator Seeding for turn, then pays 1 for a Steel Shaper's Gift, going to get Lizard. Eddie plays a Tactical Guard Guildgate and passes. Chris plays another Plains for turn, then pays 1 for a Hot Shot Mechanic before passing. Justin draws and plays his own Plains for turn, then pays 2 for Inspiring Veteran. Fog draws and plays a Ganjo, Seed of the Empire as his land for turn, and then pays 2 for a Sensei Golden Tail. Eddie plays a Forest for turn and then casts Rampant Growth to go get another basic forest. Chris draws, then pays 2 for the Omen Kill and passes. Justin draws and plays another Plains for turn, then pays 2 to cast an Arcane Signet. Fog draws and also plays a Plains, before paying 3 to cast Kamanu, Battle Armor. Eddie plays a tapped Mirrored Landscape for turn, then pays 2 to cast his own Arcane Signet and passes. Chris plays a Command Tower for turn, then pays 3 to cast Katori, Pilot Prodigy. He then crews the Omen Kill with a Mechanic, while also targeting the Omen Kill with his Katari trigger, giving him lifelink and vigilance. He then swings the Omen Kill at Eddie for 3 damage, exiling the top 3 cards of Eddie's library. At the end of his turn, Justin casts Swords to Plowshares to exile the Omen Kill. Justin draws and plays a Thrill of Possibility for turn, discarding a card and drawing 2 new cards. Fog plays a Mountain for turn, taps out to cast his commander Raiyuu and passes. Eddie draws and plays a Swamp for turn before casting a Master of the Wild Hunt. Chris draws and plays a Swamp for turn, then taps out to cast Tezzeret, Agent of Boros. He then uptakes him to look at the top 5 cards of his library, putting an artifact into his hand and the rest at the bottom of his library. Justin draws and then pays 3 to cast a Sanctuary Lockdown and passes. Fog draws and plays an untapped Furycarm Snarl, revealing a mountain. He then pays to equip his battle armor to Raiyuu and goes to combat, swinging at Justin, goading his creatures. Fog then untaps his commander and goes to a second combat, this time attacking Chris. This also goads his creatures. On his upkeep, Eddie creates a Wolf token. He then taps out to cast Tovolar's Huntmaster, creating 2 more Wolf tokens when he enters the battlefield. Chris draws for turn and then upsticks Tezzeret to look at the top 5 cards of his library, putting an artifact into his hand and the rest on the bottom of his library. He then casts the Reality Chip and pays to equip it to Katori. Chris then swings his goaded creatures at Justin, who blocks the Hot Shot Mechanic and takes the other 2 damage. Justin draws for turn and then plays a Mountain. He then taps out to cast a Symbol of the Legion and goes to combat, swinging his goaded creature back at Chris for 3 damage. Fog plays another Plains for turn and casts Basilisk Collar. He goes to equip the collar to his commander, and in response, Eddie taps his Master of the Wild Hunt and the rest of his wolves to fight Raiyuu, sending him back to the command zone. Fog then equips the collar to his battle armor and swings him at Eddie, goading his creatures. On his upkeep, Eddie creates a Wolf token and plays a Terramorphic Expanse. He then casts Ambition's Cost, drawing 3 cards while losing 3 life. Eddie then goes to combat and swings his goaded Master of the Wild Hunt and Wolf token at Justin and his goaded Huntmaster at Chris. They each take their damage, and Eddie casts Sign in Blood, losing 2 more life while drawing 2 more cards. Chris then taps and then uptakes Tezzeret to look at his top 5 cards, putting an artifact in his hand and the rest on the bottom of his library. He then casts an Ethereum Sculptor, and then casts a Phyrexian Metamorph as a copy of the Sculptor. With his artifacts now reduced by 2, he casts a free Arcane Signet off the top of his library, and then plays a land off the top of his library as well. Chris then casts an Untethered Express and passes. On his upkeep, Justin creates 1 Soldier token and draws return. He then taps out to cast Righteous Confluence, choosing to create 2 White Knight tokens and gain 5 life. Fogg plays a Forge of Heroes for turn and then pays enough to recast his commander, paying to put a counter on him with the Forge. He then goes to combat swinging his Battle Armored Eddie, once again goading his creatures. On his upkeep, Eddie creates a Wolf token and draws. He then plays another Forest and pays to cast Mantle of the Wolf, enchanting his Huntmaster. Eddie then goes to combat and swings his Huntmaster Tezzeret and 1 Wolf token to Chris, while he swings his Master of the Wild Hunt and another Wolf token to Justin. Chris then cruises Express to block the Wolf token, while Justin chump blocks with 2 Knight tokens. Eddie then casts Tribal Unity, picking humans to save his Master of the Wild Hunt. Chris draws for turn and then plays a land off the top of his library, before he pays 4 to cast his commander Rebbec. He then casts Thopter Spy Network off the top of his library. Chris then cruises Express while using Katori to give him lifelink and vigilance, and he swings his Express at Eddie, gaining 4 life while Eddie takes 4 damage. Justin creates 2 more soldiers on his upkeep and draws. He then plays History of Benalia, creating another Knight token. Fogg draws and plays another Planch for turn. He then pays 2 to cast Selfless Samurai and another 2 to cast Lizard Blades. Fogg then pays to equip the Lizard Blades to Raiyuu and also pays to use Golden Tail to turn his Battle Armor into a Samurai. He then goes to combat swinging his Battle Armor at Chris, goading his creatures. He then untaps and goes to a second combat, swinging the Battle Armored Eddie, also goading his creatures. On his upkeep, Eddie gets another Wolf token and draws. Eddie then plays a tap Jungle Hollow, gaining a life. He then casts Garruk Curse Huntsman and zeroes him to create 2 more Wolf tokens. Eddie then taps his Master of the Wild Hunt along with all his wolves to fight the Selfless Samurai. In response, Fogg sacrifices the Samurai to give his commander indestructible until end of turn. He then swings his Huntmaster Justin, who blocks with a Soldier token. On his upkeep, Chris creates the Thopter token and draws. He then pays to cast his commander Silas Renn. Chris then casts Ethersworn Adjudicator before tapping all of his goaded creatures to cruise Express, while giving him lifelink and vigilance. He then swings his Express at Fogg, dealing 7 damage while he gains 7 life. On his upkeep, Justin gets 3 more Soldier tokens and uptakes his Saga, giving him another Knight token. He then draws and pays to cast a Talisman of Conviction. Fogg draws for turn and casts a Ganjo Exemplar for 2, before paying to equip his Collar to Raiyuu, as well as paying to equip his Battle Armor to his commander as well. Fogg then goes to combat, swinging his commander at Eddie for 14 commander damage while he gains 14 life. He then untaps his commander and skips his second combat phase. On his upkeep, Eddie gets another Wolf token and draws. He then downticks Garruk to take out Chris's Rebbec. Eddie then goes to combat and swings his creatures as evenly as he can at both Justin and Chris. Justin blocks with some Knight tokens, while Chris blocks the 2 biggest creatures and takes the rest. Eddie then casts Return of the Wild Speaker, choosing to draw 2 cards off his Wolf token. He then pays to cast his commander Anara and passes. On his upkeep, Chris creates another Thopter token and draws. He then pays to recast Rebbec and then casts Chief Engineer. Chris then convokes out a Conqueror's Galleon and Aethersworn Canoness off the top of his library. He then finally plays a land for turn. On his end step, Justin casts Chaos Warp, targeting his History of Benalia. He then shuffles his Saga into his library, and then reveals a Plains off the top of his library, putting it into play. On his upkeep, Justin gets 4 more Soldier tokens and draws for turn. He then casts Dust to destroy all creatures power 3 or greater. Everybody then clears the board of all the appropriate creatures and he passes. Fogg draws and then casts Fervor before re-equipping his Battle Armor with his Basilisk Collar, and then paying to turn his Lizard Blades into a Samurai with Golden Tail. Eddie draws for turn and plays a Forest. Eddie then zeroes Garruk to create 2 more wolf tokens, before paying to cast Migration Path, going to get 2 lands, putting him into play tapped. On his upkeep, Chris creates another Thopter token and draws. Chris then pays to recast Rebbec a 3rd time, before going to combat swinging Silas Renn at Justin for 2 commander damage, which then allows him to cast Elthasworn Adjudicator from his graveyard. On his upkeep, Justin gets 5 more soldier tokens and draws for turn. Justin then casts a Dawn from his graveyard to return all creatures' power 2 or less to his hand from his graveyard and passes. Fog draws and then casts Robe of Stars and an Aki Ronin. He then goes to combat and swings his Exemplord Eddie, which triggers his Aki Ronin, allowing him to discard a card and draw a card. Eddie then blocks and trades a wolf with Fog's Exemplar. Fog then plays a Ganjo Castle for turn and passes. Eddie draws and then taps out to cast Wolfbriar Elemental, kicking him 9 times. This then creates 9 more wolf tokens. He then zeroes Garruk once again to create 2 more wolf tokens. Chris draws for turn and then casts Mechanized Production, targeting his Ethereum Sculptor. Chris then cruises Express in his Galleon and then goes to combat, swinging the Express at Fog and the Galleon at Eddie. At the end of combat, the Galleon flips into Conqueror's Foothold, and Chris casts a Fairy Mechanist off the top of his library. On his upkeep, Justin gets 6 more soldiers and draws for turn. He then casts a Silvering Squadron and passes. Fog draws and plays a Planch for turn and then passes. Eddie draws and then goes straight to combat, swinging his entire team at Chris. Chris declares blocks, and before damage is dealt, Eddie casts Decree of Savagery, making his wolves big enough to take Chris out of the game. Eddie then casts Gaze of Granite for 2, and in response, Fog pays to phase his battle armor out of the game. Eddie then destroys all the tokens on the board and some Samurai. On his upkeep, Justin creates 7 soldier tokens and draws for turn. Justin then casts his commander, Adriana, and then goes to combat, swinging his squadron at Eddie, taking him out of the game. He then exiles 2 red cards from his hand in order to cast Fury of the Hordes for free, giving him a 2nd combat step. Justin then goes to combat and swings a Squadron at Fog for 14 damage. On his upkeep, Fog's creature phases back in, and he draws for turn. He doesn't draw into an answer and scoops the game up to Justin. Justin, how's it feel to win with whatever it was you were playing?
Felt good playing my Boros deck and not doing anything, just sitting back and letting everybody else take each other out.
Hey, that's how you gotta do it. Boros for life, baby. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you can see more games and decks you wouldn't normally see in your average meta.